Here's the thing. Your tracking pixels are lying to you. Google says one thing, Meta says another, and neither one of them match your actual sales. So how do you know what's actually working? What's driving those conversions? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be digging into today. And trust me, this conversation is going to change the way that you look at your marketing analytics. Welcome to Rocky Mountain Marketing. I'm your host, Katie Brinkley. Join us as we dive deep with the world's leading digital marketing experts every single Tuesday. It's all about giving you the strategies that are working right now, directly from those who are making an impact. With my 20 years of experience, I'm here to help you navigate the world of digital marketing. Whether you're looking to sharpen your skills or transform your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started on today's journey to success. Welcome back to this week's episode of Rocky Mountain Marketing. You know, when you're looking at your Google Ads dashboard and maybe your Meta Ads dashboard, you have the dual monitors up and really not all of it is lining up. It's not adding up to the way that the books are adding up. One platform says that you got 42 conversions. Another says that you got 8. And your CRM, well, it's telling you something completely different. Well, which one is right? Well, that's what we're going to figure out today. And if you've ever looked at your data and thought, how can I possibly make good marketing decisions when I don't even know what's real? This is the episode for you because today we are talking about something that every marketer, entrepreneur, and small business owner is asking. What is going on with the reliability with my tracking pixels? So I have somebody in today that I've been looking forward to this conversation for a few weeks now. So Zeke Camusio is the founder of Data Speaks, which is an AI-powered analytics platform that helps companies figure out exactly what is driving their sales and where to invest their marketing dollars. He's spent over 20 years working in data science and economics, helping hundreds of companies make smarter, more profitable decisions based on real insights, not guesses. Zeke, I am so excited to have you here. And before I hit record, we were talking all about Colorado and snowboarding and skiing and all of the great places here in beautiful Colorado. So thanks for joining me from Portland today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very, very excited to be here with you.
Let's dive right in. So let's ask the question that every business owner, every marketer has probably asked at some point in their business life. Are advertising tracking pixels actually reliable?
Yeah. I think that the question of whether or not they're reliable would depend on how we define reliable. So the way I think it's important to understand that they were designed to help platforms know which ads and audiences are driving conversions. So from that perspective, they are reliable. They're useful to them. If you have, say, 10 different ads running, knowing that ads A and B are performing better than the others, that's important for the platform. So they keep showing the right ads, the right people at the right time. What they're not reliable at is figuring out how much actually they're driving in terms of revenue or conversions. And the reason for that is that they couldn't possibly know that because usually you're running campaigns on multiple channels. You're doing email, you're doing social media, you're speaking, you're going to trade shows, you're doing a number of different things. And of course, these pixels can't track all of that. So all they see is that somebody, clicked on an ad and then purchased something, but they don't know what else influenced that purchase. They don't even know, just by knowing that they clicked on the ad, if the ad actually did have some form of influence, or maybe you were going to buy anyway and you happen to see an Instagram ad in your feed as you were scrolling. You didn't even, engage with it, but you still purchase, so they're going to take credit for that. From that perspective, we are doing all these different things and we have an outcome. And we have to think about what is the source of truth in each case. So ad platforms are very good at tracking impressions, reach, clicks, right? That's what's happening within the platform. And then for your conversions, you have either an e-commerce platform or you have, a CRM, something that tracks those conversions. But I think it's important that we as marketers track our own conversions independently and don't leave that up to the platforms that don't have access to the whole picture.
I love that you brought up if you're speaking at events, someone scrolls past your ad and then they actually drove into your store, but they didn't actually click on it. And that's Those are things that are hard to track. So let's unpack this a little bit. So why are these tracking pixels, I guess, so inaccurate, and how can we track those type of metrics when someone the brand awareness metric, I guess?
Yeah, so there are a lot of reasons why they're unreliable at tracking revenue or conversions. So the main one we talked about is that they don't have access to the full picture, right? So they can't know how much of a certain sale they influenced if they don't know all the other touch points. There's others, right? So one of them is half of our devices block these third-party pixels. So that's a huge blind spot for pixels. Also, 85% of people start the conversion journey on one device and then they complete it on a different device, making that conversion impossible to trace back to the source. Now, another really big one is that these pixels have a set attribution window, which usually is like 7 days. So if you clicked in the last 7 days, they're going to take credit. But if you click 8 days ago, they're not going to take credit. So what it does is it really is really biased towards the last click, so brand search, retargeting, and so on. And they ignore all the top of funnel awareness activity, getting in front of new customers for the first time. If you have a product that is not an impulse purchase, chances are people are not going to buy the first couple of days. It might take them a little bit to sign up to your emails and engage with you in social. Maybe you end up sending a Black Friday deal and they purchased 3 months later. So the ad that got them to purchase in the first place is not going to take credit for that. So for all these reasons, what we see is that pixels miss a lot of conversions, take credit for conversions that they shouldn't be, don't take credit for some of the conversions that they should be taking credit. And at the end of the day, even though they're effective at communicating back to platforms which ads and audiences are performing, they're not a source of truth for us to figure out where to invest our budget.
And it's wild. I feel like what you said really highlights the problem. We're basing so much of our marketing and our ad spend on these incomplete numbers. So really we're flying blind. So if we can't rely on pixels, how do we find out what's actually driving conversions?
Absolutely. And I want to bring up a stat that I think it's very important when it comes to understanding why this matters so much. Well, two stats. The first one is that in the United States, 75% of our marketing budgets are advertising, right? So it's a lot of like our expenses. The other one is that there's three independent studies from Boston Consulting Group, the World Advertising Council, and I think it was Nielsen, and they all show the same, arrive to the same conclusion, which is 65% of success in advertising has to do with budget allocation versus in-channel optimization. So it matters way more where you invest your budget rather than how well optimized your channels are. You can have channels that are perfectly optimized, but if you're investing in the wrong channels, your ads are not going to perform nearly as well as they should. So this is kind of the why it really matters.
Yeah.
And the second question you asked in terms of what is the right way to do it, the good news is that in the last couple of years, all the ad platforms have come out and flat out just gave us the answer to that. And it's the same framework we've developed over the last few years at Data Speaks, which is three different pillars that are known as unified measurement. So the first one is media mix modeling. The second one is incrementality testing. And the third one is attribution. So media mix modeling essentially takes aggregated data. So, I'm not looking at you as a user or, your neighbor, but I'm just aggregating spend by channel, tactic, campaign, and so on, and then looking at revenue. And using machine learning, we're looking at the patterns. So if every time you increased spend for a given campaign, sales went up, that's indicating high impact. If you increase or decrease spend for something and sales stay the same, then that's also indicating very low impact. Machines are very, very effective at doing this at scale. And usually this is about 10 times more accurate than pixels. So that's kind of the foundation of it. The second aspect of it is incrementality testing, which is running market tests for different markets. So if you sell in the United States, what you could do is say, all things being equal in every state, everybody being exposed to the same emails, promotions, seasonality, social media posts, and so on, I'm going to make these changes in certain states. So for example, I'm going to turn off Google in Colorado for a week. and I'm going to double meta in New York for 2 weeks. And if you do that, because all the other things stay the same, it's like doing an A/B test where you just make a change and you look at how much sales increase or decrease as you adjust spend. The third one is attribution. So platforms provide some form of attribution, but they don't unify data. But if you use your first party tracking, then what you could do is build the customer journey where out of the three pillars, this is the only one that is at a user level. So now I am tracking you and putting this pixel on our website is first party, meaning that it's not blocked by half of our devices. It's 100% user friendly, privacy friendly. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm tracking activity from a lot of different channels and different devices and unifying that in a single view of the customer journey so I can see everything you've done. And that is usually used for I call it the small stuff. So ads, campaigns, whereas media mix modeling and incrementality are used for the big stuff, channels, tactics, where your money should go.
And I love that what you're doing at Data Speaks is incorporating the whole AI side of things because, it's wouldn't be 2025 unless AI was helping us in some regard. So talk to us a little bit about how you guys are using AI to help get all of this data that's actually useful.
Yeah. There are two ways that we use AI. So the first one is, let me backtrack and say that when it comes to media mix modeling, which is the foundation of this, in the past, companies had two different routes that they could take. They could go with a generic model that is pretty affordable, a couple of thousand a month. I mean, affordable is, I guess, subjective, but it's very accessible for most brands. Or you can spend 15 to 20 grand and have something custom built for you. And because every business is different, the example that I always give is if you're an accountant or you sell furniture, those are two very different business models with different retention rates and lifetime value and so on. So for those two to have the same attribution model wouldn't make a lot of sense. So in the past, you had to choose between, low accuracy, low price, or high accuracy, high price. But what we've done is essentially we had AI replace data scientists. So the way to create a custom model is I need to ask you, 20 different questions about your business, and based on those answers, ask you another 20 questions to follow up and get more clarification. So that could be, for example, like, what do you sell? What is your average order value? What do you like? What's your promotion calendar? Do you do speaking? Do you do trade shows? To understand how to build it around those specifications. So AI can do all that, right? So you don't have to spend a $250,000 a year on a team of data scientists when AI can get a question, all those questions, turn all that natural language into the configuration for the model that we need. And then on the other side of it, once the model runs, usually in the past, if you had a custom model, you sit down with a data scientist, go over the findings and interpret the model, explore different scenarios, what ifs, and so on. So that's also very expensive, and our AI has addressed that. So we've trained our AI to do what data scientists used to do in the past. So you can now have the accuracy that you get from a custom made model by data scientists for the price of a generic model.
And I love that AI has made it possible for us to understand how to look at so many different things that, like you said, before you would have to hire a data scientist to come in and help you with all this. You'd have to sit down. It would take weeks. And now you can get it in a matter of minutes. It's not about tracking everything. It's about tracking the right things, right? Okay, so let's make this super actionable. If a business owner came to you tomorrow and said, Zeke, my data is all over the place. Where do I even start? What are the first three things that you would have them do to clean up their tracking so that they know what things they should be tracking and to make sure that things that they're tracking are the things that are moving the needle?
Yeah. So I like breaking this down based on how much you're spending, because I like saying that, if you want to build a sandcastle, maybe you need like a toy shovel. But if you're trying to build something bigger, maybe you need an excavator, right? So what I always say is if you're spending less than $10,000 a month on ads, then using the platform pixels, Google Analytics, just maybe paying somebody that can customize it for you and make sure that it's set up the right way, that should be it. It's going to cost you nothing, like maybe $1,000 to set it up, but then you're good. When you're starting to get into the, $25,000, $50,000 of spend per month, that's when media mix modeling really makes a big difference. Because what we found on average is that we can take what our clients were spending, and by reallocating the same budgets without increasing it by even a dime, we can get them 36% more revenue. So that's a lot when you're spending $50K a month. That's $15,000 plus that you're leaving on the table that we can, just put to good use for you. When you started to spend, 100, 200,000 a month, then incrementality testing becomes really, really important. In attribution, what I always say is really depends on the business model that you have. So if you are selling high ticket items where it really matters knowing if I'm going to get on a call with you, I could really benefit from knowing that you saw the pricing page and you read this PDF and you saw a case study. That's really relevant when I want to talk to you, right? So in those cases, attribution becomes really, really important. What attribution is not going to tell you is out of the 100 sales that you got last week, what drove what. So for that kind of stuff, it's not going to help you. It's not going to help you allocate your budget. It's going to help you understand on a more qualitative level how people are going through your journey and give you specific information about a given individual. I always say that I wish I could give you like an answer that works for everybody, but it really depends on the kind of setup you have and the needs you have.
Yeah. And I think that I love that you gave us 3 different options. Google Analytics, you could use something like Data Speaks. There's different options for where you are in the journey. I want to go back to the pixels because I do think that a lot of people rely so heavily on pixel tracking and UTM links. And so talk to us a little bit about how reliable those links are. Should we still continue using them? Like, where do they make sense in our marketing journey?
Yeah. So we talked about two different things, UTM tags and pixels. UTM tags there's no reason not to use them, right? Because they're always passing additional information that can help you. And you can get very clever with UTM tags. What I always say is put a little bit of thought into how you're going to build that, because you could also build a structure across different channels. One of the things that you could do is UTM content could be your content type. So maybe it's video, maybe it's text, maybe it's dynamic product placement. I mean, you name it. But depending on your business, you can pass a really important variable there that you can use in your Facebook or TikTok or Google and so on. Then in UTM campaign, you can use underscores and just build a few variables there. So what we always do is the audience, right? So let's say you target CEOs and CMOs. So you can just put your audience there, underscore your value proposition, and then underscore the campaign name you want to give it, and so on. So you're passing a lot of information through that. So I see no reason to not use it. I think the best way to think about it is, say you go into Best Buy, for example, and you think you might want to buy a computer, but you're not really sure. You just go in and there's somebody there that very knowledgeable, really helps you think through it. And by the interaction with that person, you decide, I really need this computer. That person walks you to the register, and the person at the register essentially says, takes credit for the sale. Like, oh yeah, I helped this person check out. So there's two people that helped you check out, one of which without their help, you wouldn't have purchased the computer. The other one was, superfluous, like they helped you, but like you'd have bought the computer anyway. So that's the way UTM and pixels track. They just say, this helped, this helped, this helped. Not everything helped the same way. So pixels are, again, very effective at communicating back to the platforms essentially two things, right? What kind of people are converting, who isn't converting, and which ads are driving those conversions. There are two ways to do that. One is you just take the pixel they give you, put it in your website. That's going to be blocked about half the time. Or you can do your first party tracking. And there's a couple of ways to do this, including like free ones. You can use Google Tag Manager, server side. This kind of a conversation on its own, but you can set up GTM server side. You're going to need a CDN, Cloudflare, for example, and a developer can set all this for you. But then you're set up with free ongoing first-party tracking, and that's going to help the platform get like twice as much data, making their learning much more effective, helping them figure out much quicker without spending as much of your money, who's buying it and what ads are driving the sales. So they're very good at that. But because they don't see the whole picture and they don't see any causality, like in our case, we see that the second person talked to you before the purchase, but that didn't really add to you buying the computer. That's why the actual numbers don't work. If you look at revenue, if you look at conversions, if you look at any kind of performance metrics, return on ad spend, ROAS, that doesn't really hold up. But what I'll say is that if you're looking at Facebook data, for example, you have campaign A and B, one has a return on ad spend of 4 and the other one has a return on ad spend of 2. We can say that the first one is performing twice as well as the second one. We don't know if it's 4 and 2 or 8 and 4 or 1.5. We don't know the absolute values. We know relatively the first one is twice as good as the second one.
So, big takeaway is tracking pixels are extremely helpful, but they're not telling the full truth, right? It's only a small sliver.
I think the way I think about it is they're very good at what they were designed to do, which is to help platforms understand conversions. They're not good at helping us understand the true impact of our marketing. That's where we have to take ownership and say, I'm going to take all this data in, I'm going to model it in a way that is going to help you understand the impact of salesperson A, salesperson B on the purchase. So one way to do that would be, let's say that you send 100 people through the door that talk to the first salesperson, 100 people through the door that talk to salesperson B, and the 100 people through the door that talk to both. So then you understand that whether or not they talk to B doesn't really change much, but whether or not they talk to A doesn't really make a difference. But that's only possible if you take information from salesperson A, salesperson B, and merge it into a cohesive picture.
Exactly. When I know a lot of home builders or maybe plumbers or chiropractors, sometimes it takes seeing things a number of times before a customer picks up the phone or just drives on in. And all of that adds up into what helped make the sale. And that's where a lot of tools like what Data Speaks does, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's more than what we always say is there's a lot of different factors. And the more of these factors you feed the model, the better the model is going to perform. There's always going to be something that's going to be excluded from the model. And if that happens every now and then, what Data Speaks will show you is there was a prediction that revenue was going to do this next week, and it did this other thing. It had a peak or had a valley that you didn't expect. And that's where the AI will ask you, like, what happened last week? Or maybe it will say, I noticed this. Is this the case? But sometimes it doesn't know. It doesn't know that you went to a trade show. So you could say, hey, I went to a trade show. And so you just provide that information. So the more the model understands what's happening in your world, the better off the outcome is going to be.
Well, Zeke, this has been an awesome conversation. Where can people learn more about you and Data Speaks?
They can go to dataspeaks.ai or find me on LinkedIn, and I'm always happy to help and jump on a call, even if it's too early. And if you have any random questions about analytics, I'm always a resource to the community. So feel free to reach out.
Amazing. And we'll include all the links in the show notes. And for everyone listening, if this episode got you rethinking how you are measuring your marketing, be sure to share it with another entrepreneur who is tired of making bad marketing decisions on bad data. Zeke, thank you again so much for joining me on this week's episode of Rocky Mountain Marketing.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of Rocky Mountain Marketing. I hope you're leaving with valuable insights and the inspiration to lead your market. If you've enjoyed our time together and found today's podcast episode useful, I have a small favor to ask of you. Please hit that subscribe button to stay updated with the latest episodes. And if you know someone who could benefit from these episodes, maybe a fellow business leader or an aspiring entrepreneur, go ahead and share this episode with them. Let's spread the knowledge and grow together. Also, I'd love to hear from you and continue the conversation beyond the podcast. Visit me at katiebrinkley.com to connect, to find more resources, or just to share your journey. And be sure to pick up your copy of my new book, The Social Shift, at katiebrinkley.com/book. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Katie Brinkley, and I can't wait to dive into more strategies and stories with you on the next episode of Rocky Mountain Marketing. Let's keep on taking your marketing to new heights.